Okay, here to finish up our last discussion on the Platyhelminthes with our cestodes. So we know now about the turbularians, the planarians. We know now about the trematodes, the flukes, and now we finish it off with our cestodes, Cestoda, which are the tapeworms, probably the most familiar of this group here. So they call them tapeworms because they are flat in cross section. They look like ribbons. They don't really have a lot of musculature. They're just kind of plop there. They need to be acting as a parasite. They have no mouth or digestive region. So if you have no mouth, you can't eat. You have no digestive region, you can't digest. So where must you survive? You must survive in an area where the food has already been sort of pre-chewed. Well, first pre-ingested, pre-chewed, and then available already in the nutrient form that you can easily absorb through your body. So the idea of osmosis, of diffusion, moving fluids, moving nutrients across their body wall into their bodies. So everything, all the anatomy that we're going to talk about is because of this limitation, that they have no mouth or digestive region, so they have to specialize their body into a host, right? And again, depends on the species, but we can have then the adult living long term in the one single host, but in order to complete its reproductive process, the offspring will be in a secondary host. So some vocabulary terms here, right? So in order to understand how this animal works, we have to know about the scolex, right? So the scolex is going to be a little crown of hooks, basically, on the top part. So the scolex is this little ring of hooks that is designed to basically scrape along the intestinal wall and then puncture into that intestinal wall. So that's going to be the attachment structure for the tapeworm. If you're going to have a tapeworm living inside of you, that tapeworm has to have a way of attaching itself in your system. And that's that first sort of modification, this crown of hooks there. And then that's going to be supplemented by these big suction discs. So we have then the puncturing, so that scolex basically punctures the intestinal wall, and then the more that it pulls down, the better grip it's going to get. And then just for secondary sort of strengthening aspects, that the suction discs, one of them will be in facing the intestinal wall, will suck on and get a grip there. So once you have a tapeworm attached in you, you have a friend in you, right? You have this this parasite that you carry along with you wherever you go. They can live there for years and years. So again, we talk about the scolex, the little head region. So there's the scolex, the crown of hooks, the suction cups, the scolex, the crown of hooks, the suction cups, and again our scolex. And various species of tapeworm within the genus Taenia are going to have different modifications of the head, the scolex. Some are going to have suction discs, some not, right? So this is how we can identify some of them to the species level. We have an area that we call the neck, and then we have the body segments, actually, which we call then proglottids. Proglottids are the individual hermaphroditic body segments that we find in tapeworms. So the oldest ones will be out here towards the tail, the newest ones here by the neck. And just keep growing, growing, growing. They will break off. And then every time the host defecates, releases feces, they'll release little fragments of these proglottids. The proglottids, again, are the body segments. Depending on how long the tapeworm has been there, the tapeworm may be as short as 2 little body segments, the scolex and then the neck, or we can have up to 4,000 hermaphroditic reproductive segments. So And they're growing and growing and growing. Every time you eat, you're eating for two. The tapeworm is taking nutrients, amino acids, carbs, lipids, whatever it needs to nourish itself. It's taking it. It lives in this soup of pre-digested material, leading to anemia, leading to malnutrition, weight loss potentially. So again, you're probably not going to die from a tapeworm infection, but again, you will have nutrients deprived of your body as the worm is getting its own share first. And then every time you defecate, you're releasing out, you're contaminating your area with then these proglottids. So these can affect humans. They're very commonly found in pets, cats, dogs, goats, pigs, cows, horses, pretty much every vertebrate species out there, domesticated vertebrate, has some type of tapeworm associated with it. So again, this is where we would find the natural habitat for one of these tapeworms. It would embed itself somewhere on the wall of the intestines. And you can see their attachment with the scolex, and then the sections there as this thing grows. Actually, it would attach over here. So you can tell by the direction of the proglottids. So attachment here, the scolex up here, and then the body segments. And each time defecation happens, some of these body segments would get released out, the proglottids. Just found these off the internet. So you can see these things can get quite long, right? And again, I assume that there was a shock to go to the bathroom and have this come out of this person's body. But that's what they would look like, right? These long proglottids. If you have pets, sometimes pets shed these out as well. It's common in the biology of dogs and cats and coyotes and foxes and sort of wild canids. Basically, if we're talking about a fecal contamination, right? So things coming out of the intestines, we have the feces aspect. Well, if there's an oral aspect as well. So we have now rabbits eating grass. On the grass, maybe something pooped a while back, and now these little tapeworm eggs live there. So we have what we call the fecal and then oral contamination. And this is a very common biological cycle. It's never good to eat poop or things that are related to poop, right? So there's a lot of waste products, and in this case, parasitic eggs that now enter into the body of the rabbit. So the rabbit is contaminated with tapeworms. The dog eats the rabbit, and they find their way into the dog's digestive system. They grow, they attach. The dog has a tapeworm. Proglottids are released out. Eggs are in the grass. The mammals, the rabbits eat the grass, and our cycle continues again and again. So that's a common generic tapeworm life cycle. It can be more elaborate. We can now bring in the idea of fleas, right? Fleas, we haven't covered arthropods yet or fleas yet. We're going to get into those a little bit later. But it's the same kind of idea. So once eggs end up on the grass, right, the fleas can eat the eggs. The fleas get into the dog. The dog nips and tries to catch the flea. If the dog is able to nip the flea, ingest the flea, then now the eggs inside the flea's body basically transfer the parasite into the dog's digestive tract, and then eventually into the intestines, and then that cycle continues again. So we have the food source, we have the fleas, and again, now we can bring in humans into the system. So this is the dog tapeworm. So this is basically the dog tapeworm, where you have the cycle where fleas are a factor. Right? Dogs and cats are kind of similar. There's a different species of tapeworm for cats, but we have this life cycle. And then we have the idea now where people, I mean, I don't know if you have pets. Some people really love their pets. They let them lick them everywhere. And I don't know if you've seen dogs. Dogs lick. They're very flexible. They can lick, their backside there, their anus region, right? And if they're shedding any of these proglottids, they can transfer them directly. We can have then the indirect transmission by fleas from humans, from dogs to humans. And we have, again, this sort of transmission mode. There's another type of transmission mode. We'll get into that in a bit. I found these pictures online. Apparently in the olden days, before we knew a lot of science and a lot of the risk factors associated with these tapeworms, it was apparently quite common to ingest tapeworm eggs on purpose. So I want to lose some weight. I don't want to go on a diet. Ooh, I don't like to diet. Ooh, I don't like to exercise. Apparently, ooh, I don't like to take baths. So no diet, no bath, no exercise, no danger. So people were ingesting these tapeworm eggs and basically losing weight. But again, there's some problems associated with that. I don't recommend this at all, right? Don't ingest tapeworm eggs. Don't try the amazing tapeworm diet. I guess, yes, it's all natural, but it's not the most healthy way to lose weight. Lard to be gone, right? The lose weight the easy way. Try new and improved lard be gone now with live tapeworm eggs, right? So again, this is stuff that probably was accepted in the past and maybe prescribed. But again, I hope you know that this is not the correct way to go about losing some pounds, right? So get off your ass, go to the gym, work out, eat healthy, eat some salads now and then, but don't try to take this type of shortcut to ingest tapeworms, right? So we know today that there is a particular tapeworm that we associate with pigs, right? The pork tapeworm, Taenius solium, right? Pigs for a long time have been associated with being unclean animals. And depending on history, different parts of the world, depending on certain religions, pigs are associated as filthy animals, and a lot of cultures, a lot of religions do not eat pork, right? I suspect there's some biological idea to this, right? Pigs do harbor certain types of parasites, maybe not more than other organisms, but if you think of how a lot of humans keep pigs, pigs are an important food source: pork chops, carnitas, ham, bacon. But in nature, pigs move around a lot, and pigs are not filthy animals. They're actually quite clean. But if you're raising them in a domesticated situation, you have them in a tiny pen, they're eating slop off the ground where they're pooping and they're rolling in their own feces to stay fresh. There's a lot of contamination of, fecal oral contamination, and a lot of pork that's not raised hygienically, properly, sanitarily wise. They can harbor a lot of these tapeworms. And I hope you know this, but if you're going to eat pork, you have to cook the meat well, right? You can't have rare pork chops. Maybe you can have a rare steak, but not rare pork chops, not rare bacon, rare ham, because of the risk factor of the pork tapeworm, right? So that pork tapeworm tends to encysst itself in the muscle tissue. So when we eat the ham, the bacon, the carnitas, the pork chops, we can then ingest the larval forms, these cystic forms, into our system, right? And then you have then the pork tapeworm living in your intestines. We already talked about that idea, but a worse condition would be if the eggs or the gravid proglottids enter into the brain area, right? So once we have these basically lost forms, that they're not in the right location. And I don't know if you learned something about, being in the Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts or Girl Scouts. We were always taught, if we're hiking and we get lost, don't just keep going and get more lost, right? Just kind of stay still, call for help, signal for help, and don't just keep wandering farther and farther, because you might be going farther from where you need to go. So it's safer just to stay put and hopefully help finds you. Well, it's kind of that same idea. So once these little eggs or these larval forms of the parasite find themselves in the brain tissue, right? They figure this is not the right place to be. I'm not in the intestines. There's no, digested intestinal juice coming my way here, right? So basically, they kind of just sit there. They insist themselves, and they're waiting to be consumed by something else to end up in the stomach, in the intestines of another predator, right? So they cause big time complications. We call this cysticercosis. If it's in the brain, neural cysticercosis. And basically, these are cysts within the brain tissue that can have very, very profound effects. If it's in the intestines, malnutrition, anemia, you can cope with that, yeah. But if we're in the brain, you can see these cysts in the brain tissue. That's going to start to compress the brain nerve tissue neurons. It's going to start to affect motor functions. It's going to start to have, pain, other complications. So that's not a good scenario, right? And I'll upload a video that kind of shows the case of this, right? But again, the moral of the story: cook your pork well. Right? And again, with that will then conclude our discussion on this group here. So I hope you see that very, very diverse group, right? So we talk about our tapeworms, our cestodes, our flukes, our trematodes, and then the non-parasitic forms, the turbularians, our planarians there. So there are, again, about 30,000 species. I didn't do this group justice, but I think I covered the ones that are more significant, that have more direct ecology with humans. And just, again, hope you learned something. I hope you can apply this to your everyday life. And with that, I'll conclude this presentation, and I will bid you a good day. Right. So I'll see you on the next group, the next type of worms that we're going to cover. And you'll have a great evening.